that was an interview with Chile's Undersecretary of Environment. And now it's my pleasure to introduce some live guests here. Matías, Cortés, Calderón, like the former president of Mexico.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Executive Director of the NGO CEUS in Chile. Great. Then Gonzalo Melej, coordinator of the Decarbonization and Just Transition Program in Chile Sustentable. Okay. And then Cindy Quevedo, president of Apukuraka, the Consejo Nacional de Pueblo, Colla, with a translator. Okay.
Thank you.
Just say that better than me. Just say, introduce Cindy better.
It's Cindy Quevedo.
Yep.
She's president of the Consejo Nacional del Pueblo Colla.
Not bad, not bad. Almost as good as mine. Okay.
A bit worse, but just slightly.
So after hearing the Undersecretary General's perspective on Chile's energy transition, what would you say is the key point you agree with? And what is an area that you believe is not right, a blind spot? Maybe you could put that question to Cindy first.
La pregunta principal es, ¿cuál es un punto con el que estarías de acuerdo con lo que dijo Trump y cuál es uno con el que estarías completamente en desacuerdo?
Bueno, muchas gracias por invitarme. Creo que uno de los puntos que todos estamos de acuerdo es que hay que transicionar, sobre todo de los combustibles fósiles, carbón y eso.
I think one of the main points of agreement is regarding fossil fuel phase out.
Y creo que nuestro país puede dar un pie importante en Latinoamérica en esta posición, porque tenemos los materiales de transición, pero también tenemos el clima como para poder generar esta transición energética limpia.
And Chile has a very privileged place in that sense because we both have transition minerals and resources which are useful for that, but we also have the capacity and the climate to lead a transition to renewable energy.
Los pueblos indígenas estamos de acuerdo con la transición, pero el punto que falta, el punto que quizás todavía estamos débiles como país, es poder incorporar efectivamente la voz de los pueblos, el consentimiento libre, previo e informado de los pueblos indígenas.
And First Nations are in agreement and want an energy transition, but one of the things that has to be done is to advance it with free, prior, informed consent in that sense, and to incorporate the voice of First Nations and indigenous peoples in the policy decision-making area.
So just a follow-up question. So is there a land grab for indigenous people's land for renewable energy projects?
Están preguntando si se está intentando expandir los proyectos de energía renovable en el territorio indígena.
Sí, en Chile casi todos los proyectos de transición o los proyectos que generan energía limpia están en territorios indígenas, y las materias primas clave para la transición como el litio y el cobre también están en territorio indígena. Por tanto, los indígenas son un elemento que tiene que estar presente, su voz, pero sobre todo su consentimiento, porque muchos de estos territorios son territorios sagrados, y ahí ya es otra connotación la que tiene.
Yes, so First Nations are very involved in this because many of and most of the renewable energy projects, as well as the projects on extraction of transition minerals such as lithium and copper, are in indigenous territories, but they're not only in indigenous territories, they're also in sacred grounds. So it has a different, deeper connotation regarding their culture and religion.
Okay. Now over to both of you. Well, you first. So tell me, it's the same question. What did he say that was right? What did he say that was maybe not right?
Well, thank you for the invitation. I don't have a very good English, so I apologize in advance. I have here my text, my note. So
yeah, super.
Well, first, I agree with Cindy and with the subsecretaria. With the accelerate transition in Chile, it's good, but it's some elements it's so important to attend in this transition because we have some problems. Three elements important. One, we have been marginalized in the process of closing power plants. We don't have territorial planning. We don't have citizen participation, and the transition is without environmental remediation. So, for example, in Tocopilla, where still closed 6 thermoelectric power plants, you are going to the city, and in the city still you can see the infrastructure of the central. You can see the ash, the ash.
Ashes, yes, good.
The ashes. So we have a very big problem with the remediation ambiental, and also with the territorial planning. Like Cindy says, for example, we have a lot solar and wind electricity, but the project distributed in the territorial without planification, and have problem with the communities, with other productive sectors. So are some elements we need to attend urgently.
So is that some of the feelings you have about this? Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I would just like to add that I think there's a very big conflict or issue at the moment, in the sense that right now what's at stake is the legitimacy of the transition. If we are not able to create an energy transition which has social responsibility with it, which has territorial planning, which takes into account and makes First Nations part of it, then what's going to happen? What's going to happen is that everyone is going to start to say, oh, well, yeah, we transitioned to renewable energies. So what? What benefit did that give us, right? Like, there are some specific places which have had an improvement in health, which is very important, which are what we call the zonas de sacrificio, the sacrifice zones. Yes. But to the common people outside of that, for example, in Santiago, where you have 5-6 million people who have never seen a coal power plant, what do you say to them, right? Because the energy bill, for example, is rising, and it has nothing to do with solar energy, right? Solar energy generation is cheaper, but the overall electricity outlook is rising anyways. So the thing is, how do we maintain social legitimacy? And we do it by having territorial planning, by incorporating First Nations, by actually making policy that incorporates everyone.
This seems to be a problem not just in Chile, but in many places where you are finding that even though the level of renewable energy is getting higher and the cost of renewable energy is getting lower, the bills that people are paying for their electricity are going higher. This doesn't make any sense, and it is playing into the pockets of the populist right-wing politicians. Is that a problem in Chile too? Yep.
Yeah, I think it's a very big problem at the moment. It's something that we are facing, which is hard to work around, because the way the energy industry works in Chile, where you have a different sector for generation, for distribution, and for transmission of electricity, means that it's going to get higher anyways, because costs keep rising, right? So you keep playing into their hand without being able to do much.
Matías. You're Matías. Sorry, I'm getting confused there. Let me not do that. Let me go to Cindy first. The global energy transition has created enormous pressure on the ecosystems in Chile. such as the high Andean salt flats and lagoons. Can you tell us more about this issue and how is it experienced in the Colla communities?
La presión de la transición energética en solares y también cómo lo han experimentado no solamente los ecosistemas andinos, sino que las comunidades Colla.
Bueno, ha sido muy duro esta política que tenemos hoy en día, la transición energética. Ha estado impactando fuerte no solo los territorios donde habitan los pueblos indígenas que viven en alto andinos, sino que también al tejido social de los pueblos. Se está destruyendo, se están enfrentando y eso ha provocado un quiebre dentro de los pueblos indígenas que nadie está tomando el costo.
So, of course, there has been an important environmental damage, but there has also been damage in the social tissue, so to speak, of the Colla communities. So there have been internal conflicts which are created due to the industry starting to try to have people legitimize their lithium extraction projects.
Porque además tenemos que ser conscientes que está bien, esto es una transición que se necesita aceleradamente, pero nuestro Estado está tratando de hacerlo tan apresuradamente que la consulta no está llegando a todo el pueblo, sino que solamente a ciertas comunidades. Y eso lo que hace es que las comunidades que constituyen un pueblo se enfrenten entre sí, porque algunas quieren, por ejemplo, la minería de litio, otras no. Entonces, por eso debe existir una consulta al pueblo y el consentimiento del pueblo para poder extraer. Y en este caso, el Estado está pasando por encima de ese derecho y no le está consultando ni esperando el consentimiento, ni buscando el consentimiento del pueblo Colla.
And so one of the main issues is that while the energy transition has to happen quickly, the government is rushing too much. And what that means is that for the Colla First Nation, not all communities get to be part of the consultation process. And what this means, for example, there are some communities which do want lithium mining. There are others which don't want it. But if you don't have a long process, or not a long, but an adequate process of prior consent, you won't reach any sort of consensus.
So just to clarify, for the indigenous people in the high Andes, the question is not so much the renewable energy, but the mining of minerals to create the renewable energy industry. Is that correct?
Sí, me preguntaba si en verdad el problema es si la preocupación no es respecto tanto a las energías renovables en sí, sino que a los proyectos de extracción de minerales relacionados.
Sí, bueno, en ambos espacios, porque cuando pones granjas solares o grandes espacios, también se ocupa mucho territorio del desierto. Pero no es tanto el impacto como la extracción, sobre todo la extracción del litio, que es una minería de agua en el desierto más árido del mundo. Entonces ahí la cosa cambia, porque además se impacta territorio sagrado del pueblo Colla. Las cuencas de agua son espacios sagrados, donde están las montañas más altas, donde están los apus, que son montañas sagradas. Entonces, es un daño que para nosotros no solamente es material, sino que también es mental.
So the thing is, you also have some impact regarding, for example, large-scale solar farms in the desert. But that's not as impactful for the Colla First Nation, for example, as lithium mining, because lithium mining in the end is water mining. You're taking water out of the waterways, out of the waterheads, and for them the Apu, the sacred mountains, the rivers have a deeper meaning regarding water availability. So they're sacred for them. So it has a much bigger impact.
And the impact of screwing up the water isn't just for the indigenous people, it's for all Chileans, yeah? Okay, good. Gonzalo, you've been monitoring the coal phase out in Chile. Is it progressing well, the getting off coal? But are there signs that maybe it's slowing down, getting out of coal? Yeah.
Well, I think it's necessary to do a fastest contextualization of the
Yes,
decarbonization
okay.
in Chile.
Yeah.
With that, we're referring specific to the process of close out the power, the electricity, the coal power plants, specifically of that. And in Chile, we have in 2018 28 coal-fired power plants operating. It's approximately 14% of all the country's electricity and emitting about 25 of all greenhouse gas emission of Chile. So the 28 power plants, it's responsible to emit the 25% in Chile of all greenhouse emissions. Then in 2019, in the context with the COP25, in Chile, a voluntary agreement was reached between the government and the companies that own the thermal power plants to close all coal-fired units by 2014. Today, we have 11 power plants just closed, and another 9 plants were committed to closing this year, but this is not happening. There are another 8 units to have no closure data and will be able to operate until 2014. That is the context of the process of decarbonization. With this, I think the process of coal-fired or closing coal-fired power plants in Italy at a faster than expected the early years, but this is mainly because of the rapid deployment of renewable energy and storage. Today we have, like the subsecretary said, 35-14% of renewable energy. In 2018 we have 12%, so in 6 years is fastest the increase that. But we have some concern because this year in particular we have seen signs of stagnation that could be contrary to decarbonization. Okay. Firstly, as mentioned above, 9 coal-fired power plants that were supposed to be shut down this year have not been closed, and there is no certainty as to when this will happen. Second, because some of these thermal power plants that were committed to closure have been sold. Specifically, I'm referring to 2 units located in Quintero Puchuncaví, the units Ventanas 3 and 4, which the AES company sold to another investment group. And thirdly, and maybe is the most concerning to us, are the proposals for conversion to coal ammonia co-firing technology, which does not mean the end of coal burning, but rather perpetuates its use and consequently its global emissions and local pollutants that are damaging to human health. So far, this is an option presented by the Colla company for implementation in its 5 thermoelectric units in the municipality of Huasco, and this case is particularly alarming because Huasco is the only municipality where no close any power plants, and with that alternative, it's possible to be burn coal at least 2014.
Okay, so the target was 2040 to get off coal. It started well. it moved quite rapidly, and then suddenly, yeah, there's this slowdown. Okay, so what you need is this COP30 to have an absolutely clear decision that all governments must have a clear plan to phase out fossil fuels, and there must be pressure on every government to do that, yeah? Matías, tell us a little bit about what your work is and how you describe the work you do in a just transition. So this fits in a little bit with what Gonzalo is talking about, yeah? Plus what Cindy's saying, yeah.
Sure. Well, CEUS's work has to do it has to do a lot with just transition, and we do a lot of policy briefs, and we check out the NDCs and the NAPs, and we check out what we can do regarding just transition and what other countries in Latin America are doing. But most of all, and what's most important to us in terms of just transition, is to create a generation which has the capacities to keep this work up. Because what we see is just transition as an intergenerational process. First of all, it requires intergenerational justice and equity, which means that when we're old, there's going to have to be someone to replace us, right? But
you're not as old as me, don't worry about it.
But in the end, what we want is to create a thriving policy space, right? What we want is for just transition to be something, to be a policy topic that everyone can talk about, that everyone, can make decisions on, that everyone can be integrated into. That's why CEUS works a lot, not just in capacity building, which we do, but we also always try to do things like town halls and other participative kinds of sessions where people don't just learn about the topic, but they are also able to express their opinion, and then we can do more work and make a policy brief and bring it here to the UNFCCC and say, this is what people in the region are talking about. These are their demands. And to be able basically to be an enabler, to grant them spaces, to give them a voice.
Good. I mean, you're right, because every year, every 5 years, every 10 years, there are new ministers of environment, new governments starting, just learning about climate change again. There are new journalists in newspapers and radio and TV. There's new members of NGOs. This is a long-term transition to a completely different world, right? So you're right on that. Talking about changes in government or government policy in Chile, what about this first round of the presidential election? What are the results looking like? What do you think this could mean for the energy transition and communities? Maybe we could ask Cindy this first. Can you translate that question?
Yeah, of course.
What does it all mean? Yeah.
Bien. Entonces, ¿qué te parece los resultados de las elecciones del día de ayer? Considerando los resultados, ¿qué crees que podría implicar tanto para la transición energética como para las comunidades, considerando no solamente la primera ronda presidencial, sino que también el Congreso?
Bueno, yo tengo una crítica importante. O sea, lo primero que tenemos que diferenciar es que el norte global está celebrando un futuro más verde, pero nosotros que estamos en Sudamérica, digamos, estamos siendo zonas de sacrificio. Esa es mi primera mirada. Y en cuanto a eso, creo que en esta segunda vuelta, que está muy polarizado, izquierda, extrema, derecha, extrema, creo que las posiciones están muy marcadas. Una posición de la izquierda pretende seguir con esta transición y la otra, que es la de derecha, digamos, ha dicho que efectivamente no cree en esto, que efectivamente no piensa que haya que defender un animalito y que finalmente eso demora mucho los proyectos, entonces que él quiere ser más diligente con el tema de los proyectos sin tener que estudiar mucho a quién se está afectando tanto biológicamente en el ecosistema como a las comunidades. Entonces para mí es súper complejo y creo que es difícil, se va a dar muy difícil este tipo de programa que se impulsó en este gobierno, que se pueda seguir y continuar si quizás nos vamos al otro extremo totalmente diferente, porque ya lo ha dicho ese candidato que no es su fuerte.
All right, yeah. So to start off, she gives one big criticism, which is that no matter what, we're still in this very harmful kind of dynamic where the global north is benefiting and pushing towards an energy transition, while the global south and our countries in South America, for example, are heavily exploited for minerals, etc. Having said that, within the election, we see a lot of polarization with what would be the second round, but mostly what we see is that there's a very clear position from the left in regards, maybe not the best, but still there is an idea to go along with an energy transition, while on the right wing, the far right wing candidate has already said, well, there are many people who deny climate change, but even if they don't, they have still said that it is not their priority. They probably wouldn't go on with an energy transition, and most of all, that their perspective is that climate protection and environmental protection and biodiversity protection actively hampers and slows down investment, and what they're worried about is investment. So they want to do away with all environmental regulation in the country in order to basically go on and go forward with more investment.
So they're all friends of Donald Trump and the Argentinian president and all those others. Yeah, okay. By the way, just one quick question. The Colla people, they vote in the elections? Yeah.
Sí, sí, los Collas votan.
Sí, por supuesto.
Yeah, of course.
Your perspective on the presidential elections?
I agree with Cindy said. Only I can agregar another impression, but we have two options where maybe any one of us propose a change economy model or someone else, but I think we have the risk if the one candidate will win. Maybe we go back with the transition. Maybe we go to open coal power plants or go back to all of the environmental regulation we have now in Chile. So I think that it's the principal risk of in this case with the second part of the elections in Chile.
Do the right in Chile, or the right anywhere in the world, not read the science? And do they not read that if we don't act on climate change, the global economy could crash by 50% in 20 odd years? Do they not read all this research? I don't know.
All right. Yeah, I don't. For starters, I think they don't read it, but otherwise, I think it has no legitimacy for them because they don't care. I think they're betting that they will come out on top anyways. I think that if there's a climate disaster, if there's a social disaster, all they're betting on is that they can stay on top and then reap the benefits of the inequality they caused. Que si también no, te quería lo que estaba preguntando también era si crees que, no sé, porque quizás la derecha no lee ciencia, ¿por qué no toman acción?
Creo que simplemente no le interesa o no cree en el cambio climático y es más importante la producción que el buen vivir de los pueblos y de la comunidad en general.
I think it's just that they don't care about environmental protection and their main priority is production and not the well-being of people.
Maybe they should go. The right wingers should go and look at the Andean glaciers and see how many are left. The ice in the Andes is disappearing, right?
I need the translation. Yes, totally. The glaciers go back and all of that it's disappeared.
So we're going to have to end the program right now. I want to say thank you for being with us. Thank you for the rain, God, and thank you for tents that don't let the rain in. I think what you're going through in Chile is not unique to the rest of the world. There is a right-wing reaction happening, but I don't think they have the answers. But they may have the government for 4 or 5 years. That's a problem, but I don't think they can ever completely take over because reality will come back. Thank you very much indeed for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Gracias.
Thank you very much.
Gracias.
Gracias.
Week 2 at COP30 here in Belém has officially begun, and here are our key takeaways from the final day of week 1. First, we took part in a climate talk event with US Senator Whitehouse. As we all know, the US withdrew from the Paris Climate Agreement earlier this year, and despite this, US Senator Whitehouse remains optimistic and says the US will not give up the climate fight. When asked if we were on a pathway to climate safety, he gave a clear no as an answer. But what is even necessary to take a first step into this pathway to climate safety? He calls it a negative and a positive pressure. So first, we have the negative pressure that needs to be put on the fossil fuel industry. Then we have the positive economic pressure which needs to be put on stuff like innovation and the development of new technologies. A big takeaway as well from the event was educating the global community on climate discussions and climate issues, such as the Paris Agreement, for example. How he plans to do this, here is what he has to say.
Well, here's an example. Electric utility bills are going up in the United States. It is making people angry because it's making it hard for them to get by. It is not hard to explain that when the Trump administration is deliberately pulling clean energy off of the grid is then forced to go to fossil fuel plants, more expensive fossil fuel plants. So their cost goes up because the new, more expensive fossil fuel plants on the grid drive the cost up, and their money goes straight to fossil fuel pockets, which is the intention of the Trump administration because it wants to pay back its big fossil fuel donors. And of course, he doesn't like using his own money, so he makes ratepayers pay more in electric utility rates. How long did that take me to explain? 1 minute? I think that means it's explainable to people.
Although the US is not part of the Paris Agreement anymore, the world tries to finance the consequences of climate change. Today, the COP30 and COP29 presidencies reported back to the press, observers and delegations how they will proceed with the Road to Belém roadmap. This roadmap is a document that is not an agreement, that is not binding, a strategic agreement that will help the developing countries to finance the climate crisis. It aims for $1.3 trillion per year starting 2035.
On the very last day of the first week at COP30, I participated at an event about renewable energy and energy transition. I learned that for countries who don't even have a stable energy resource, it is extremely difficult for them to switch to a renewable one.
For instance, the Caribbeans. They're constantly faced with natural disasters, so they won't be prioritizing the switch to renewable energy because they have to constantly rebuild their economical state. On this hand, I have to mention that a lot of communities are hesitant to switch to renewable energy. They don't have enough proof that this is something that they can maintain and will actually improve their daily lives.